This is She's on Call, a weekly show hosted by ENT specialist Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar and General Surgeon Dr. Marina Kurian. They'll be joined by guest experts to discuss an array of newsworthy medical and health issues. You're invited to ask the doctors anything. The physicians and their guests' views are their own and do not represent any institution. Please contact your doctor for any personal questions. Please hit share and join us live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at She's on Call, hashtag She's on Call. Please welcome our hosts.
Hello, I'm Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar. I'm an ear, nose, and throat surgeon with practices in Midtown Manhattan and Wayne, New Jersey. And my co-host, Dr. Marina Kurian, is a minimally invasive surgeon whose specialty is obesity medicine and surgery and bariatric surgery. She is off today, enjoying herself, I hope. So I'm hoping you're having a nice Sunday off, Marina. It is the first show of our second year here at She's on Call, and it's very appropriate because July 1st is actually the first day of the calendar year for doctors. This is when graduations have occurred and medical students and residents are either done with their schooling or training, and the new ones are coming aboard or you're moving up to the next year. It's really a very joyous time of beginnings and continuations and endings in the United States. Today, we're going to meet 3 medical students who will share their journeys with us and their passions and help us talk about how to have a safe and healthy summer. If you're watching from the Southern Hemisphere, please keep these tips in mind when December comes around. We have 2 second-year medical students, or MS2s, from the CUNY School of Medicine in New York City, Leela Rungachar and Eva Odaise, and a 4th-year medical student from Boston University School of Medicine in Boston, Massachusetts, AJ Nathan. If you're in medical school or considering it, or know someone who may be considering it, please like and share and tag your friends and have them join the conversation. We are live on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Sri Srinivasan's LinkedIn page. We're on scroll.in, and I hope some of our friends from the Indian subcontinent are watching. We are carried on WBAI 99.5 FM in New York City area and WBAI.org on Mondays from 2 to 3 p.m. And I have to tell you, the audio-only experience is really quite nice. So I encourage you to listen if you can. We have a sponsor who's sponsoring us for the entire month of June. Thank you very much to ENT and Allergy Associates. They have over 40 offices in New York City, Long Island, Westchester, and New Jersey, and they offer same-day access to safe, high-quality ear, nose, and throat and allergy care. And you can go on their website, entandallergy.org.com, to schedule. And thank you so much to ENT and Allergy for continuing to support us. Normally Marina and I have a little bit of a chit chat now, but I'm going to chit chat all by myself. I wonder if that's just called a chit or a chat. So let's talk about COVID-19. COVID-19 continues to rage around the world. Very few countries are vaccinated in any meaningful measure. 75% of the vaccines have gone to only 10% of the countries in the world. In the United States, we reached another terrible milestone. We reached 600,000 people who have died of COVID-19. Now, our rate of getting there is much better than it was before. And you can see in this graph on the left, it took us 89 days to reach 100,000 deaths, then 118 days to reach 200,000 deaths. But then, horrifyingly, after Thanksgiving and Christmas, when we let our guards down, only 36 and 34 days to reach 400,000 and 500,000 deaths. And then it's come back to 115 days to reach the 600,000 deaths. And this is really due to masking, to distancing, to social precautions, and of course, to vaccination. After an initial rush to vaccines and people really struggling to get vaccines, we now have an overabundance with fewer people being vaccinated after April. And really, please get vaccinated. The majority of the world has no access to vaccines. We need the world and our country to be vaccinated. 44% of the United States is fully vaccinated, but this varies state by state, with Vermont having vaccinated 80% of its population, and then Mississippi really only vaccinating under 30% of their population. So we really, really need you guys to get vaccinated, please. Vaccinations are so far only approved in people aged 12 and over in the United States. And unfortunately, we're seeing bad outbreaks in younger children, 138 children in a remote area in the Northern Ontario First Nations, which is the Native Canadians. And we are also seeing more severe disease in young kids. So 1% of children with COVID end up hospitalized, which is a ridiculously high percentage. And 7% of all hospitalized patients with COVID-19 in England are children, and you can see that with the yellow graph on the slide. The disease is also not always mild in teens. We are seeing that teens with COVID are hospitalized in the United States at 3 times the rate than they were for the flu. So this is a bad disease. We are also seeing people not showing up for their second of their 2 vaccine shots. So the 2 vaccine shots that are approved in the United States are the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine is a one-shot vaccine. When you get your second shot, your immunity increases by 10 times and really gets you to full immunity 2 weeks after that second shot. This is really important because we're seeing the Delta variant on a rapid increase throughout the world. It's overtaking in England. It's 50% of the cases in Portugal. It's going to be it is in fact the prominent variant now in the US, and we expect to see a spike further. And we see that if you have 2 vaccines against COVID, you retain a 91% chance of not getting COVID-19 from the Delta variant. If you have Johnson & Johnson, you have a 66% chance of not getting the COVID-19 variant with Delta. However, even if you get the disease, it's much more benign. You may be asymptomatic or feel like you were down for a day or 2, and you're probably not contagious with it. So there are many, many, many reasons to get vaccinated. We're also unfortunately seeing all the other viruses come back. As we take off our masks and go out into public, we're seeing all the viruses come back. And this is a study from Houston Methodist Hospital. And you can see that all the virus infections dropped down to basically 0 when we put on masks. And then as soon as we took them off, they all came back. And this includes one called RSV, or respiratory syncytial virus, which is often benign but can cause really bad pneumonia and other lung problems, especially in young children and in infants. So just, be careful. We've learned a lot about viral transmission this year. We've learned a lot about being careful around others and caring for others. So please do so. This is Father's Day, so for those of us lucky enough to be able to celebrate with our fathers, please enjoy. For those of us who have lost our fathers, we really hope that you hold their memories close and remember the good memories. It's also Pride Month, and fatherhood and motherhood is complicated in Pride Month. My friend Ray posted an Instagram story about how when he came out, his father immediately disowned him, and Ray had to make the family he needs, and he has. And as we discussed 2 weeks ago with Doctors Anderson, O'Brien, and Ledgerwood, please pick your family and celebrate whoever and whatever you want. And I hope you find the joy in celebrating the family that you have created. As I said, we are live on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. We're on scroll.in. We're on Sri Srinivasan's LinkedIn page. We are carried on WBAI 99.5 FM and WBAI.org on Mondays from 2 to 3 p.m. Please like and share and let your friends know that we are talking to three wonderful medical students today. I'm so happy to welcome them. They are future doctors. They are hopefully going to be my future doctors. EVA Odiasi is a second-year medical student at CUNY School of Medicine. Leela Rangachar is also a second-year medical student at CUNY School of Medicine, and that's in Harlem, New York City. AJ Nathan is a fourth or final year medical student at Boston University School of Medicine in Boston, Massachusetts. So welcome aboard.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad to see the three of you. I'm so glad you were able to join us. As I said, June is an interesting transition time for all of us in medicine. It's almost like when we celebrate New Year's Day, December 31st, it doesn't mean anything because the new year is really now. Let's talk about your journeys to where you are. So I will let our viewers know that I went to CUNY School of Medicine when it was called the Sophie Davis School of Biomedical Education at City College in New York. And I graduated from there in 1984 and did my final 2 years of medical school at Mount Sinai. That has morphed into having its own medical school, and rather than farming out their students at the end of what would be their second year preclinical year of medical school, they keep everyone together. So EVA, you are in that combined program. Can you talk to us about how you made the decision as a high school student that medicine was for you, and how you went about making the decision to go to CUNY?
Yes, of course. So in high school, I did a lot of internships to kind of understand what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I did one internship my junior year at Bronx Westchester. They're partner with Toro College, and they exposed us to just so many different aspects of medicine. I was extremely fascinated. I couldn't stop talking about it. I loved everything I was learning, even though I didn't understand much of it. I still was fascinated by just everything. And it was after doing that internship, it was 2 months, and I realized I really, 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 really like it. So once I decided, okay, if I wanted to do medicine, I looked up the traditional path, taking the MCAT, applying to medical school. And one day while I was reading the newspaper, I saw Sophie Davis BSMD program. And I was like, whoa, what's that? And I started researching a little bit more about that. And I realized that because I decided I really wanted to do this path, being able to do it with help and assistance and having a structured, guided way to do it just made sense to me. So after reading the newspaper, I started researching a little bit more about this program and the mission, helping the underserved community, and realized it speaks to what I want to do when I become a physician. So I then decided I'm going to apply to a ton of BSMD programs. And when I got into Sophie, I was very excited. I'm excited and happy because the mission of the program really resonated with what I wanted to do.
That's fantastic. Leela, you're in the same program. Can you talk to the mission of the program and your decision? You know, when we make our decisions so young, do you ever regret it? Or did you find that during COVID, your ideas about becoming a doctor changed?
So the mission of Sophie Davis, EVA spoke about it a little bit, is to produce physicians to serve in the underserved communities and to increase the diversity of the medical field. And I think I actually have quite the opposite of regrets. 17 is a really early age to commit to medicine. So I did take a bit of a risk there, but in the past 4 years, and especially in this past year with the pandemic, I've only grown to love science and medicine more and more. I think the pandemic really exposed a lot of the health disparities, and that further cemented my interest in bringing healthcare to underserved communities and allow people to have an equal chance for optimal health. So I think it definitely, I didn't have any regrets. And in the past year, I also got to learn, and we're in our first year of medical school. So our school goes organ system by organ system. And we've gone through about 6 organ systems, and each one I was just super interested in. So I definitely didn't have any regrets, but.
That's wonderful. You know, lots of medical students shared your lack of regret, you know, so you know, in the beginning, people were like, wait a minute, we didn't sign up for a death sentence, right? Because COVID felt like a death sentence. You know, we talked on this show about how we all, you know, sort of essentially took a Silkwood shower and stripped before we communicated with our families. You know, I had older in-laws living with me, and you know, I love them, but I didn't touch them too much because we weren't quite sure how things happened. But when they surveyed medical students overall, most of them felt that their desire to become doctors was in fact cemented during this process. So I think, world, that we are in for the greatest group of doctors ever who are going to be taking care of us in the future. AJ, your path to medical school was a little different, right? So I think you knew a little later than EVA and Leela. And can you talk to us about how you went forward to medical school?
Yeah, of course.
EVA.
Yeah, of course. So I took the traditional path. I went to undergrad at UC San Diego.
Do you know where the connection to what route is? My connection keeps going in and out.
Yeah, so I took a little bit more of a traditional path. I didn't know what I really wanted to do going into college. I was an undeclared major. I was just trying to figure it out. I wasn't really thinking about medicine for a really long time until I found out what medicine was actually like, and that was through shadowing opportunities and really seeing what the field was like, what doctors actually do. It's different from TV. It's different from what you would think or imagine. And so I think after that first shadowing opportunity, I was like hooked to applying, and from there I kind of tailored my journey to towards going into medicine. But it still was a little bit of a longer journey after that. I applied 3 times to medical school and only got in on the very last time. And I think that's becoming, unfortunately or fortunately, a very common trend. It's getting harder and harder to get into medical school. So there's many different paths to medical school. And I can go on about all the things I did in between, but yeah.
So, you know, I think that shows if there's a word that I can say about physicians in general, it's perseverance, right? We persevere and we want to figure out the answer to the question, and we want to get our patients the best care that they can get. On the way, we look at different types of majors in college, right? So we have, of course, 50% of people choose biology. In fact, 60% choose biology or other sciences. But we have people come to medical school from different backgrounds, from arts, from health, from engineering, from a variety of backgrounds. And I think we look for smart people who can bring a global experience, a different experience. But you did talk, AJ, about the difficulty of getting into medical school. We have a little graph that shows that it is, in fact, really hard to get into medical school. This year, let's see, about 53,000 people applied to medical school, and 22,000 matriculated or are about to start medical school. So only about 40% of applicants make it. And you did talk about the fact that sometimes it's try and try again, and sometimes it's try and try and try again. So how did you do that? What did you do to convince a terrific medical school like Boston University Medical School that you were the guy?
Yeah, so I think the first time I applied, it was straight in my senior year of college. I was pretty sure for myself that I wanted to do medicine, but I don't know if, looking back in hindsight, I had the best story as to why I wanted to do medicine. So going from there, my first year applying, I did not get any interviews at all. And so I really took a step back and thought, like, what could I do this next year that would be different, which would actually get me more clinical experience for me to also figure out if this is really what I wanted to do. So in that next year, I started working at a research lab, a clinical research lab at UC San Diego in neurology, and I really got to work with a lot of patients, work on clinical trials, and really see like a completely different side of healthcare and medicine, and in the research side, and new and developing drugs and therapeutics. And so that was a little bit of a different path I went after undergrad. I applied again that year with this new experience and was a little bit more successful. I got a few interviews, but still did not get in that year. And then I took, again, another step back and thought, is this really what I am meant to do? It's been 2 years now that I haven't gotten in. What else can I do? I took a big leap and decided to do a master's program across the country in a city I've never been to, in Boston, at Boston University. And that is a path a lot of people are trying to take now, especially after undergrad, if you may not have the best grades, or you may want to get just more fulfill your school requirements, or whatever it is. So my program was a master's in medical sciences. And so that was really, it was a coursework that was equivalent to the first year of medical school. And so I got to kind of show that I was capable of performing at that level. And from there, I got great letters of recommendation, and eventually was able to make it into a medical school here as well the following year. So that was kind of my path here.
I think that's wonderful. And I think, all three of you have talked about your experiences and your really patience, right? It's patient-centric, right? You want to do something that's going to get you to being able to help people. Speaking of people, we have people checking in from all over the place. Miriam Berkeley says this will be interesting. Ellen Austin says hello from New York City. Pankaj Kumar is writing from India, where he says that the vaccines available there are Covaxin and Covishield and Sputnik. And it really remains to be shown. We need some data to see if those are going to be valid against the Delta variants. We actually don't have the data yet, but we're really hoping that the whole world gets vaccinated so that we can get back to life. We have Bhargavi checking in from Connecticut. We have Darren Breston checking in from Tucson, Arizona. Thank you. You rock, Doc. I'm going to take that as a me, but it could be the three of you. Barbara Valle is checking in from Port Chester in New York. And people are asking, can they ask a question? You can ask us anything you want. Naomi Kuke says, so nice to hear your thoughts. And Bhargavi says, very insightful and inspiring journeys, and I absolutely agree with that. You have, I think back to when I was a medical student, and I was just a student. Like, that is it, right? That's all I did. I worked on the yearbook, whatever. But you all three have held leadership positions that show to your understanding of healthcare, not as a single thing, but as a global perspective. So Leela, let's talk about AMSA. What is AMSA, and what does being president of CUNY School of Medicine's AMSA chapter mean to you?
Sure. AMSA is the American Medical Student Association. It's student governed, a national organization, and its mission is pretty similar to actually the Sophie Davis mission to make healthcare accessible and medicine affordable, and create systems that support the diversity that we see in around us in the population. I've been a part of AMSA for 5 years, and well, actually four full years, starting my 5th year now. So I started when I was a freshman in college, and its mission spoke to me, so I really stuck with it. We have now, as president, I am involved. I have a wonderful e-board with me to organize events that our chapter is interested in. And we've had suturing clinics where the Army actually has come in and taught undergrad and graduate students, but particularly the undergrads are very interested because they get some early clinical exposure. So they've taught us how to do some simple sutures, and that was a lot of fun. We've done a bone marrow registration, so I think we had like 100 students sign up for the bone marrow registrar, and I went to the picture was from the national conference. They have an annual national conference in Washington, D.C., which was a lot of fun. I met the most amazing, inspiring other medical students from all across the country. And we all shared our study tips, and there were poster presentations. And it was just a really great way to meet other students in that are interested in what I was interested in, and to see how they are such successful medical students. So that's been my involvement with AMSA. We've done a lot of other things, but it's been great, and I'm gonna stay involved for the rest of my medical school career.
So I think that's great. I will tell you, I only became involved in national medicine once I was a resident, or maybe even as a junior attending. And I think early involvement really shows you different ways that people communicate and different ways that people approach medicine in different parts of the country and different parts of the world. And I think to that, EVA, you are in leadership. You're president of the Student National Medical Association chapter at CUNY School of Medicine. I love this picture of these 7 incredibly beautiful future doctors in red on Convent Avenue, right up in Harlem. Can you talk to us about what SNMA does and your role and where you see that going for you?
Yes, absolutely. So SNMA's mission is very similar to Sophie's. It's increasing competent, underrepresented minorities in medicine, and just creating and fostering an environment where people of color can receive the resources they need or the help. SNMA really stands for pipeline program. So as president of SNMA, we have a couple of pipeline programs. Right now, Sophie Davis has a pipeline program with A. Philip Randolph, which is a high school across the street. And we just encourage students there to pursue whatever careers they desire, and just help them by telling them our experience, giving them insight. We help with college essays and applications. And recently, we are just in the fall going to have a pipeline program with CUNY, helping students who are interested in medicine. Just a little bit about our journeys, even though we didn't take that, my school and our school, we don't take the MCAT, and we don't have to apply outside, but just our experience as medical students and what has helped us get this far, and studying habits. So it's really exciting. I'm excited about that. But SNMA really stands for helping and opening the door for the next generation or the people behind you. And we do that through pipeline programs.
That's wonderful. I think that, it's representation, right? You often can't know that you can become what you cannot see, right? And I think this is really, really crucial. And starting as you are doing in the high school level or even in the middle school level, because the pipeline is you have to be, really good in high school, and then you have to be really good in college, and then you have to, so there's a whole way to get there. AJ, we have a couple of questions from viewers. Miriam asks, what's ghosting? What ghosting are you talking about? And Bhargavi says, can you give 1 or 2 tips for optimizing a medical school application, having had some experience? And then I want to talk to you about your leadership positions as well. But let's talk about that.
Okay, yeah, sure. So shadowing is what I was talking about earlier, but that is basically a great entryway into figuring out if you even want to do medical school, and that is to find a doctor that's willing to have you, even as a high school student or a college student, follow them and see what a day in the life is like. So you'll literally shadow them throughout their whole day. See patients with them, and in some cases, like I shadowed a surgeon, and in some cases, like getting to see what surgery is like too. That is really the best way to kind of figure out if you really to start to understand what medicine is actually like. So that's what I was referring to there. As far as the application standpoint, I think really the best way to really like optimize your application is to figure out what your own story is and what your own passions are. And that's easier said than done. I think it's hard to put yourself into one package as to describing, this is why I'm passionate about medicine. This is why I wouldn't be happy doing anything else. And that sort of comes with the experiences that you've done leading up to the point of your application. And you really have to kind of sit down and think about what ties all of those things together, and how can I present myself in the best way to medical schools that really tell my story and my unique experiences and why I deserve a seat at medical school.
Thank you. There's a question from Pri Ranjan that says, what are the best course options available in paramedical? So Leela, I'm going to ask you, because at CUNY Med, you have a medical school and you have a PA program. So can you talk to us a bit about the physician assistant program there?
Sure. The Sophie Davis program does have a physician assistant program as well. I believe that's 2 years long. So the training is about half of medical school. There are other options like nurse practitioner. I believe so. A physician assistant can only practice where there is a physician. They can prescribe medication, but there has to be a supervising physician there. While a medical physician does not need that. And then I believe a nurse practitioner is, you don't need a supervising physician to practice. And their training is also shortened.
Right. So, and I think there are different paths to providing healthcare. I think when we work as a team, that is the best resource for the patient. Janet Weeks says, as an old emergency department nurse, she loved July. She loved meeting all the young, fresh faces. I have to tell you, when I was an intern I started on cardiac surgery at Bellevue. I was 22 years old. I was just about as dumb as dirt. And I remember the chief resident said to me, go put in a Swan-Ganz catheter, which is it's a line that you put in the neck that goes into the heart to measure pressures in the heart. It is not easy to do. I kind of vaguely remembered how to do it from watching somebody when I was a medical student. And so I went to the nurse and I said, and they were going to come help me. They weren't just going to leave me there, but I had to prepare. So I went to the nurse and, I'm a young kid in the beginning of the summer. And I said to her, how do you prep for a swan dance insertion in this hospital? As if I had any clue in any other hospital. And, she got it and I got it. And frankly, when you guys are on your clinical rotations, trust the nurses. They will help you. They have seen it all and they will help you. AJ, let's talk about the South Asian Medical Student Association at Boston University. The pictures that you sent show people from all different races. So what do you do with this group? Plus you
Yeah,
look
sure.
in your lungi there.
Yeah, so the South Asian Medical Student Association, the local chapter at our school, are really we leave leadership at our school up to individual incoming leaders to kind of decide what they want to do, where they want to take the organization during their year in leadership. And so in my year of leadership there, I really wanted to encourage unity through diversity at our school and really show that really show our unique heritages and how we can all come together and celebrate that. So the pictures that I showed, one of them was from, both of them were from our annual culture show, where we asked students to kind of perform song, dance, or spoken word that really shows their own unique journey of how they got here. And then the picture on the right was from a dance troupe that I started with some of my classmates, which also we each have unique trainings in different styles of dance, and we taught each other our unique styles, from Bharatanatyam to bachata to Afro beats, and we all performed our everyone else's styles of dance. It was really a great opportunity to bring our whole campus together and kind of show show the medical campus, show each other where we are and where we're coming from and where we're going from here.
That's great. Barbara Valle, who wrote in earlier that she was watching, is a big Afro-Caribbean dancer. And I think that combination to show the beauty of dance across countries and across traditions is fantastic. We are live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and on Sri Srinivasan's LinkedIn. We're on scroll.in. We appreciate people watching from all over. Please continue to chime in with your questions and your comments. Let's pivot a little bit. We promised some summer health tips, so let's give some summer health tips. First of all, I have to tell you, I was in a couple of airports this weekend. Please wear your masks. Masks go over the nose and under the chin. They don't go, they cover everything. They don't go under the chin so that you just get to breathe or under your nose. So I'm just going to say that. A bunch of trauma surgeons were talking about, as summer comes upon us, what our health tips are. And, I'm going to read them out to you guys. And I know, AJ, you've done some ER rotations and you've seen some of the calamities that can befall people who don't follow these suggestions. Please wear a seatbelt. Please don't drive drunk. Please don't text and drive. It can always wait. If you must be in communication, get a program in your car that reads your text to you and you can read your text back in. Update your smoke detectors. They're done when we change our clocks. Put helmets on your kids and put helmets on yourselves. We unfortunately see, awful brain damage and even death from lack of helmets. If the helmet cracks but your head doesn't, that's a win. Don't play with fire, lots of campfires. Don't start forest fires if you're playing with fire. What about the guns? Please put away the guns. The Friday night, Saturday night knife and gun club over the summer, fueled by alcohol, is really terrible. Trampolines, we talked about this a couple of shows ago. They are not a group activity. You can jump around on a trampoline all you want by yourself. Once you put a number of bodies in there, they just become colliding missiles. Be careful if you're driving a four-wheeler or an ATV. Fireworks are really dangerous. So there's a picture of somebody who was doing a project at home. This is not fireworks, and it chopped off all their fingers. And he actually designed a hand, mechanical, that moves. That's very cool, but it's actually better to have your own hands. And I know Ben Chang from the University of Pennsylvania from CHOP talked to us about firework safety over the summer, and just continue to be careful when you're doing projects. If you feel like your gutters need cleaning, let somebody who knows how to do it do it. AJ, any thoughts on this list?
So it's really interesting, actually, seeing all of those things, because so I did my pediatric emergency rotation last summer when during kind of the height of COVID, and it was kind of funny because most of the time we were sitting around and wondering where are all the sick kids, and that's because everyone was home and quarantining. We weren't seeing the regular like upper respiratory tract infections that bring children to the emergency room, and instead we're seeing a lot of more of these kinds of things like accidents. And I really want to emphasize the helmet aspect. I think I've like many days of the week, we're seeing kids being brought in for evaluation for head injury, and it's really scary because sometimes you don't know what is a serious head injury or not, and honestly, it is the best thing to bring in the child into the emergency room if you're not sure. And just really emphasize, yes, helmets are very easy and very the best way to prevent head injury during these outdoor activities.
Thank you. Unfortunately, America is a land of mass shootings, and the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School shooting was one such terrible, terrible tragedy in the United States. The father of one of the children who was killed, Fred Gutenberg, his daughter was Jamie. He is actually starting a Dads for Gun Safety initiative this Father's Day to really talk about the harm that guns, either loaded incorrectly, stored incorrectly, or used incorrectly can do. So gun safety is something we will never stop talking about on this show. And hopefully we will stop talking about it, because hopefully Americans will wise up to it. We can pivot a little bit and talk about sun and water safety. And we have some tips about this. And Leela, I know that you were a lifeguard. So can you talk to us from that perspective about some of these tips that you see on the slide?
In my, I don't know. Am I unmuted?
No,
I was I was a lifeguard in my junior and senior year of high school, and I definitely did see a couple of injuries at the pool. So I'd say my advice to parents and to children: don't run around the pool. I have seen a couple of people falling. The floor can be slippery, but also falling in the pool. Don't dive in a place that the pool is not deep, because then again, you can have serious head injuries. Try to avoid rough play in the pools. Young children shouldn't be swimming alone and should always have someone watching them. And if they're not feeling safe swimming in the pool, they should be wearing floating equipment. And for everyone, wearing sunscreen to avoid overexposure, and staying hydrated, because I've also seen a number of fainting spells at the pool because you're just sitting there and baking and sweating all your water out, so you're getting dehydrated. So make sure to just keep drinking water.
I love those tips, and I think they can come from a lifeguard, and they can come from a doctor, and they're valid whoever they come from. EVA, a lot of people of color feel like, oh, I am protected from the sun naturally. Is that true?
No, not at all. Um, we still sunburn. I have sunburned before. It's still something that happens. I know I've, some people have told me, oh, I don't like to wear sunscreen because it gives me a white cast. But there are a lot of new sunscreens out nowadays, like Black Girl Sunscreen and other companies that have made an effort to help with this problem. So now I can wear sunscreen. I'm wearing it right now, and you don't see as strong of a white cast, and it still protects you because it definitely, you can still sunburn. Black people still get some sun cancers, and you can still get injury from overexposure. So it's definitely important. And there are new sunscreens and sunblocks out there to really just help and work well with our skin color.
I think that's a great PSA. Actually, I didn't know that they were making sunscreen and paying attention to the underlying skin tones of people. So thank you very much. See, I learned something. I could leave now because that's it. I just got to learn one new thing a day. So the last thing I want to talk about for summer health tips is hiking and camping. So everyone's going to hit the great outdoors and wear the right clothes and the shoes. Don't twist your ankle as you're climbing up some mountain. Who's going to save you? Again, with the sunburn, but mostly with hydration, and make sure the water is clean. So I know my brother-in-law does a lot of hiking and camping, and carries with him the ability to purify river water, let's say, if need be. Like I said, don't start forest fires. We're seeing a lot of heat and dry weather. Palm Desert, California was 118 degrees a couple of days ago. So we are seeing the kindling ready for forest fires. So if you happen to start a fire, please put it out completely before you leave. Use insect repellent. Check for ticks if you're in a Lyme endemic area. And so you see on this graphic, you see somebody with an engorged tick that's being pulled out with a pair of tweezers. That gives you this bullseye rash. We had a guest, Lash Nolan, who is at Harvard Medical School. And she wrote a paper in the New England Journal of Medicine called "Medicine is Missing the Bullseye." And she was talking about, she was using a pun on bullseye because the bullseye rash is the sort of common tick-related Lyme rash. But in African-American skin, it can be much harder to see. So, be cognizant that maybe the doctor won't know to look. So you really want to point out that I was in a tick area, and I think I pulled them all off, but I'm not sure about this discoloration of my skin, no matter what your skin color is. And then we did have on that graphic a little snapshot of the difference between poison ivy, poison oak, and sumac. And these are contact allergies that can occur. And if they occur, you wash your skin with lukewarm soapy water. You wash the clothes that you were wearing, because people have gotten it back again because they haven't thoroughly washed the clothes that they were in. And then some people can get actually severe allergic responses from this, even having some trouble breathing. So you want to be cautious with this. Let's get back to talking about healthcare in general. We are live on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. We are on Sri Srinivasan's LinkedIn page. We're on scroll.in. We're carried on WBAI.org on Mondays from 2 to 3. So to our medical students, this week, President Biden made Juneteenth a national holiday. And it's the first new national holiday since Martin Luther King Jr. Day was established about 40 years ago. So this is a picture of the signing of the Juneteenth proclamation. And I have to tell you, if you guys have not heard about Miss Opal Lee, she's the older woman in white in the slide. She is a 94-year-old freedom fighter who has campaigned incessantly for decades to make this a national holiday. Her story is incredible. Her statements are incredible. She's one of my heroes. So EVA, can we talk about what is Juneteenth and what does that have to do with being a doctor?
Sure. So I recently found, a couple of years ago, I found out about Juneteenth because it's not taught in schools. It's not something that, until someone had told me about it, I had no idea it even existed. But it's when the news finally got back to Texas about the end of slavery and slaves were set free. And I do think it is important, and I'm happy that President Biden made it a holiday. I do think more steps need to be made. For instance, teaching it in schools and just the awareness of it. And I think it's important as physicians too, because it's just a part of some disparities or inequities or systemic racism or just a bunch of different things it leads up to. And having this and being able to talk about this in an open conversation and talking about, okay, this is what has happened and how we can move forward is the only way we can move forward and better treat our patients and better treat people around us too.
Yeah, and I think this is where physicians talk about social determinants of healthcare. We touched upon it a little bit earlier because all three of you are passionate about this, but social determinants of health are not just whether you're vaccinated or not, or you got sick or not, but all of these other things, social, economic instability, whether you have a community that you can depend on, what kind of neighborhood environment you live in, whether you have access to healthcare, whether you have access to education. So AJ, I think you guys started a program to really incorporate the concept of anti-racism and of understanding social determinants of health at Boston University School of Medicine. Can you talk to us about this?
Yeah, sure. So this was a pretty big undertaking at our school that was entirely student-driven. But a lot of us recognized that the way we were being taught about race in medical school wasn't really lining up with what we knew race actually was and how we knew race is known to affect health and social determinants of health. And so what we got together to do was to really identify how we were being taught about race, whether it was through our curricula, whether it was on the wards, and really and see how we can integrate it across our all four years of medical education to say, what do we want a graduating physician to know about race and racism and how it impacts health? And so this is super important for many reasons. And one is as simple as recognizing that and recognizing and naming racism and its effects on health. And others is like to really to get rid of the kind of extra burden that there is on trainees of underrepresented minorities who are coming into medicine. And that extra burden that they experience with a curriculum that is additionally teaching or continuing to propagate racist ideas really adds to that burden and really and a lot of times discourages people of underrepresented minorities to to join the field.
You know, I think that's a really important statement. So when we look at our medical school classes in the United States compared to our population, we see that about 60% of our population is white and about 60% of our medical school classes are white. We see that a much less percentage, 8 or 9%, are Asian, but in fact about 15% of our medical school classes are Asian. But then if you look at Hispanic or Latinx, if you look at African American, and if you look at Native American and Native Alaskan or American Indian, you can see that they make up 18%, 13%, and 0.7% of our population, but only 7%, 7%, and 0.3% of our medical students. And you can't even see the Native American graph line because it's in gray and it's way at the bottom. So this is a real concern because we take care of all patients and hopefully we all take care of them with respect and dignity. And I think what you're saying about the added burden of being a much more minority than you should be in medical school is really important. I think Student National Medical Association addresses this. I think the outreaches that you all three have talked about addresses this. Can we talk about Walk with a Future Doc? What do you think that does, Leela? How has that, what is it and how has that impacted?
So Walk with the Future Doc is actually one of my favorite organizations I'm a part of. It's a branch off of a larger national organization, Walk with the Doc, which was started by a cardiologist, Dr. David Sabger from Ohio, and he found that as much as he counseled his patients in changing their lifestyle, exercising, eating a better diet, they weren't actually going out and doing the exercise, and their conditions were not improving. So instead of just lecturing, he decided to demonstrate the importance of walking, and he started a walk one Saturday. He went into the park and told his patients, told community members, come and walk with me. And the first walk turned out to be quite a success, with over 100 people in the community walking, and he made it a more regular event, and then created this organization. And now there are over 500 chapters around the world, all led by physicians in an effort to encourage healthy physical activity by providing a safe and opportunity for those in the community to walk and talk with a physician. So they can ask him questions, and a Walk with a Future Doc is student-led, so medical student-led, and pretty much we do the same thing. We get to interact with our community members and give them advice on what we're learning in medical school, improve the health literacy of our community. There are so many known benefits to exercise. It can reduce the risk of heart disease, diabetes, osteoporosis, cancers, depression and anxiety. It can control conditions that you might have, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, and so many more. So it is something that's so important that we can, get through to our community to get them moving. And this is one way that we're able to do that.
I love it. I love the outreach all three of you are doing, and you are just representative of this group of medical students. I'm really impressed. I meet medical students from many medical schools, and I think that your understanding of society and the need for cohesiveness and better representation is really remarkable. EVA, in your work with Student National Medical Association, people say, oh, there's the token person of color, there's a token woman, there's a token whatever. So how do you remove the tokenism from what you do?
That's a great question. I think it's just more about, at least for me, I think more about the people and think more about just the community. So in terms of that, like for instance, I mentioned there are a lot of pipeline programs or resources, and that's the purpose of SNMA, and that's what we all try to do, is just to increase the numbers, increase culturally competent physicians, and just let people know that they can do it through representation. They can see it, they can do it. It doesn't have to be a token, or it doesn't have to be something that I'm happy to be a part of this group because it's something that we talk about. It's something that we try to make better, or to make ways forward, just to help people who would otherwise wouldn't have even believed that they're deserving of the help. So I hope I answered your question, but in just terms of just creating and fostering this environment and community, and just trying to make it normal, so it's not just something seen like, oh, it's only there, it's only in that specific group. It's everywhere, hopefully one day.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I think making our medical community look like our community. It really makes a lot of difference. Normally we end with 3 takeaways, but we are running out of time. So I know you've dropped a lot of pearls of wisdom here, all 3 of you. If you can tweet out some takeaways for us, that would be great. We are so happy to have had you with us, Leela Rangachar and EVA Odiasi from CUNY School of Medicine, AJ Nathan from Boston University School of Medicine. Thank you so much for sharing this hour with us. Thank you to ENT and Allergy Associates for sponsoring this and several of our programs. You can reach them at entandallergy.com for a same day or next day ENT or allergy appointment in the greater New York City area. If you'd like to be a sponsor of our program, please email Shree at shree.net, SREE at SREE.net. Next week, Marina will be back, yay! And we are going to be talking about community efforts to improve the mental health in cities and towns before, during, and after COVID-19. Have a great Sunday. Happy Father's Day. Happy Juneteenth. Happy Pride. And thank you so much to our guests today. Bye.